Good morning. Sitting here having my happy coffee, which is MCT protein powder and a little bit of liquid whipped cream. You know, I found out that American creamer has oil in it. So I stick to half and half and sometimes whipped cream. I found the things that bring me joy are often a balance of health and not health. I don't know that liquid whipped cream is considered to be super healthy to put in your coffee, but maybe the MCT oil and protein powder balance it. I don't know, it's about balance for me. So I woke up this morning with the strangest thing. I woke up to a bunch of comments on one of my videos, and if you happen to be one of the people that made a comment, thank you. They were impactful and insightful and interesting, and I didn't expect that. And I feel really humbled because for so long I didn't share a lot of the things I was thinking or doing because of shame and thinking I don't deserve to share until I get to a certain place. And I had been a certain way in my life before, and I'd posted a lot of videos, but in places like Facebook and stuff where I have 1,000 friends or something. But I had changed my life so much. For some reason, whenever I post there, I really struggled with shame and feeling judged. And I had had such a fancy life before, and it looked so good on Facebook. I used to fly first class to China. I worked in supply chain of footwear with very big brands doing very big things. And I was a life coach and in transformation, and I had this very good looking guy, and we got married, and I discovered it wasn't a real relationship. I don't know what it was. He had a son. I loved his son very much, but we got home from our wedding party and there wasn't a relationship. I don't even know how to describe it. It wasn't a real person. He didn't want to be with me, and I don't know why he was pretending to be. And then I realized in my work, it looked so fancy, but what I was doing made me very unhappy because I was compliance. I was in China to make sure these shoes and bags and big name brands I was producing for, Ralph Lauren, Reebok and Adidas, huge stores here in the US, Target, Walmart, all these things. And it was my job to make sure that the products had the right chemicals in them, so they were compliant with every country we were shipping into, which was most countries around the world that have a modern economy. And much to my surprise, the US has the smallest requirements. We don't require our products to be very safe. The EU and even China are much more strict than us. And it was also my job to make sure that people in the factory were being treated right according to things called codes of conduct that every company and brand has that says, you can't have child labor, you can't overwork people, you can't, have any kind of human trafficking, prison labor. But at the end of the day, everybody wants things cheap. And at least in America, we'd rather have it cheap. We want to say, I want people to be treated fairly and there to be no children in my supply chain, but we want it cheap. That's our main concern. And so it was my job to make sure that all of our factories and production matched the requirements in our computer system, like our paper trail. And I was very good at it, very good at it. But it wasn't the truth in reality. And this is how all of business is done. It's not like this company was doing anything odd. It's how it's done. And they don't usually send the little American girl over to China or the other countries for this reason, because it's not pretty. And I got there and I learned it all because I love to learn, and I study things till I know. And I managed teams there, and I built trust and rapport with them so they would tell me what was really going on. They couldn't email it to me, mind you, because everything was watched by the sort of Taiwanese overlord managing the office. And it's not his fault either, because he was put in place by the American company for specific reasons. But when I got over there with them, they could tell me more. And I realized that I was working essentially in legal fraud. It's legal, it's accepted. It's not legal, but it is. It's how companies do business. And I was really good at it. So it was like my whole life was a fraud. And I got really sad about it. And I started drinking too much. And thankfully, something in me crashed and burned the whole thing. But it didn't look very pretty. I don't know what it looked like on Facebook, but needless to say, I fell from grace, and probably not very gracefully. So I used to make videos, and I had a lot to say, and I was like, just I had so much shame because different people would have met me on there at different times. God knows what they saw or thought. And I felt I couldn't express myself openly and just be me. And I found myself a few years ago sort of crash and burning at my parents' ranch. My parents have lived all over. My dad worked for NATO and lived all over in the military. But they had ended up on this beautiful ranch in Colorado, and they had chickens and geese, and it was very natural and beautiful. And my circumstances were not great. I needed to put myself back together, sort of. And I don't usually stay in one place. I can be really good at running away, or I was. But I couldn't leave because I had some legal issues that had come up because of my drinking. And I didn't even live in Colorado at the time. I was just passing through to visit them for Thanksgiving. And I came around the corner on this country road, and there was a cow in the middle of the road. I lived there for 4 years afterwards. I never saw another cow in this road, and I drove this road every day. But I came around the corner, and there was a cow in the road. And I went off the road, and there was a cop sitting there shooing these cows back into a fence. And I had had a few drinks, and so I got into trouble for that, for drinking and driving. And suddenly I found I couldn't leave. Thankfully, no one was hurt. The cows weren't hurt. It was all very peaceful. But I think I saw one cop on that road in the next 4 years when I drove it every single day. And I never saw another cow on the road, so go figure. But thank God all that happened, because suddenly I found myself filming all these animals and hanging out with these animals, and everything changed. And the first evidence of the change was my very real marriage now, my very real love in my life. I had no idea love could be like it is with what I have now, and companionship and friendship, and it put me on a whole different journey. And I think the whole time, probably my asking was for real life. I wanted to know real happiness, real transformation. It has to be out there. Here I was in life coaching, and I was like, it's all kind of a fraud too. I went into that whole field, and the people I met, including myself, mind you, but they weren't real. They weren't really feeling how they projected, and they weren't really mastering life the way they projected. They just weren't. And they weren't nearly as deep as they sounded. And in life coaching, you don't have to be that, because really real life coaching, I went to a very advanced school. It was very expensive for a year, $10,000, and got very well trained in it. It's really about listening and asking questions. In that capacity of listening and asking questions, you don't have to be perfect to do that. But I also discovered in that field that there's something energetic going on, especially in transformation. There's a big trickle down. So in transformation, we would have these classes we would do. And at first I was a student, right? And then I was a coach, and then there's a captain level, and then there's a trainer level. So there's all these levels of sort of training and coaching happening to create transformation for the students, which is great in theory. But because only the trainer was paid in this business model and everyone else was volunteer, and they asked a lot of their volunteers, it was almost a full-time job to do, like to coach a class. It would go on for several months, and it was very intensive. Well, they couldn't really have people that had real jobs do that, because I had a real job and I was also coaching, and it was so much. It's like 80 hours a week, right? Because you're putting so much into my job, and they weren't paying me at all. It was all volunteer, and they asked so much. So they ended up with a lot of volunteers who weren't working, and they ended up with a lot of people who shouldn't have been coaches. They weren't even remotely there. They had a lot of personal issues, and you could see it. So whenever they ran a class where people, the coaches or captains, had real life issues that were unaddressed, it would show up in the students. And it would show up in really big ways. And it wasn't until actually a few years after I got out of it that it came to my attention that one of the trainers was actually into BDSM, which, if you don't know what that is, you don't really need to know, but it's sort of more intense sexual relations with whips and chains and things. It's sort of sadomasochistic type of sexual behavior. So, and I found out she was into that and actually had a store that sold the stuff. And it started to show up in my life, and it started to show up all over in different people that were in the classes and coaching that didn't even know about it. And I realized that we are contagious energetically and vibrationally. So when we engage with people, especially in really tight, closed, intense spaces, we're contagious. What we have shows up in our clients. On the one hand, you could say, I'm attracting people that have that in their vibration. And so they're working it out with me, which is part of it. And that's totally cool. But at one point when I was coaching privately, I started to realize I was coaching a lot of a particular therapist's clients. He was giving me clients. I had been a client of his, which let's not have a talk about boundary issues at the time, but I didn't have as good of boundaries then. And I was coaching his clients, and I suddenly sort of had this realization one day that every single client of his had an addiction issue, an active addiction issue. These things weren't being addressed. And they'd been in therapy with him for a while. And I was like, why, if you are seeing a therapist for an extended period of time, has someone not brought up to you that you have an addiction issue? If I'm seeing a therapist for a long period of time, I would say it's going to come out eventually. And the therapist should say, hey, I think you need to get this addressed, even if it upsets and scares away the client. And so that's kind of how I began to realize that I had an addiction issue going on, because I was like, okay, if every client coming to me and from this therapist, and I'm seeing this therapist, or was, like, there's something going on here. And I can't really help people in addressing these issues if I don't take myself on and address the issue at its core. So I started to realize that whether I'm attracting people who are just like me, who have addiction and don't want to address the issues, so we're not going to get anywhere anyway, because I don't want to address the issues. So we're all just going to pretend we're getting somewhere. And that's what really bothered me. I don't like pretending to get somewhere. And this is a lot of what I found in transformation and coaching and therapy. And it's like we're all pretending to get well. We get the therapist, we go into transformation, we get the life coach because we want to pretend we're getting somewhere because it looks like we're doing work. But when it comes to actually doing the work, like, you can have all these books that I've strewn about in front of me, but if I'm not applying it, if I'm not really being it where I'm at and living it in my own life, then it's all just a show. And that's what I realized. In so many ways, I was just living this show. Like, I'm pretending to help people. I think I'm really helping people, but I'm not. And so I think I'm helping people in China in the factories, but I'm not. I'm just continuing to prop up this broken system. Now, I can make it a little bit better. The last job I left, people were really upset because I was protecting some of them. And they know that I'm a space for integrity and fair treatment and merit-based leadership. And they're like, don't leave us because you're protecting us. And I said, I'm not here to make a crappy situation just okay. That's not what I'm about. I want to take a situation and have it be amazing for everyone involved. I want to feel amazing. I want my people to feel amazing. I'm not here just for mediocrity, even though it's making things a little bit better. And in China, I could have helped make things a little bit better. For a while, maybe a lot better. I don't know. But I wasn't going to drive some kind of gargantuan change because the whole system is set up to run it the way it is. You'd have to start a whole new supply chain system, which, if you'd like to start one with me, let's do it, because I know how. But it would take a whole different view and a whole different way. And so anyway, I realized that I had to get out of the whole game, and I started just filming animals, and I have a lot of animal footage. I posted on another channel. Maybe I'll post a little here because there's something about nature, but I didn't know how nature worked with this. And I knew I healed there. I healed in ways that are wild. Like I said, I have an incredible marriage now. I'm totally sober. I love being sober. My husband actually is the type of person who's never drank. You don't even meet those people. The only people you meet that don't drink are people that used to drink too much. You know what I mean? And that's what I wanted in a partner. And he knows just how to have good, clean fun. And we have good, clean fun and a different way of being. And there's something happening here that's different. And I don't know how that healing worked. I mean, I've been to 30-day rehab. That doesn't work. AA works. But there becomes something after a while with AA where your disease is made to be too powerful. And I don't believe... Well, I believe your disease is too powerful when you're in active addiction, and so AA is a great bridge. It gets you out of it and definitely gets you sober. Staying in it keeps you in a place where you don't have all your power. And I don't agree with that. There's something here that is a power game. And so I use this tool. If you notice down here, so this is an emotional guidance scale. This tells us where we're vibrating. Wherever you feel is what you're vibrating. And those are the kind of experiences, people, things, places you're going to attract into your life based on where you're vibrating. And of course it changes. But you can see a lot of people are living here all the way at the bottom, which is fear, depression, despair, powerlessness, insecurity, guilt, unworthiness. I spent a lot of years there. But if you notice, it says powerlessness. Now you have all these different levels if you want to come up. And this has helped me understand that, if someone's feeling really unworthy and I walk into a room and I'm really joyous and they seem to get mad at me, that's a good thing. I used to think it was a bad thing, but I've learned now, I'm pulling them up the emotional guidance scale. If they're blaming me, even better, like, oh, that stupid bitch, she's so blah, blah, blah. At least they're coming up on the vibrational scale. So I'm making peace with that because I can really annoy people being a positive Pollyanna at times. So anyway, it comes up. I know I don't seem like a positive Pollyanna right now, but if you come up here all the way to the top, which is my goal, is to get up here where I believe Jesus, Buddha, any major incredible prophet who was healing people was vibing at, and what the sort of sages of the day are talking about is getting up here at joy, knowledge, freedom, and empowerment. Notice the word power again. We go from powerless to empowered. And there's something about that, and I'm still exploring that. I think it's accountability. I think it's accountability that takes us up and realizing, and you can do it as small as, I've got some good examples, but of just taking accountability for I chose this job, I chose this car, I chose this life, but it can be even bigger as in I'm creating with my thoughts, which is the real form of accountability, to say I'm attracting what's happening in my life with my feelings and my thoughts. No one told me that my thoughts and feelings were part of my spirituality and that it was creating my life. It seems like an important thing to know. And that in order to get empowered, I have to take my power back, which means I'm not giving it out to everyone around me all the time, which is what I was doing. So back to what I was saying originally, I couldn't post anywhere where anyone knew me. So I made up this channel so I could just post things and not care. And now the challenge will be, can I keep posting if there's people here? Because I feel often like a dingleberry. Like now I've been rambling for 18 minutes. Who in God's name is going to get anything out of this? But maybe you would. And I have to trust that anyone that watches it hopefully would, because I have changed my life now. And I am going somewhere. It's not perfect. See, I'm on the journey to figure out what happiness really is and embody it and not be someone that just speaks about it intellectually. I'm going to continue to read and share information from those masters, people that have mastered it or have something to say. I'm here to apply it because I believe, based on what I just said, I'm contagious, and anyone that's going to come join me on this is going to be on the same journey. And I know that when we do things together, we're more powerful. We may not be alike. Like there was a comment this morning. We may not be alike, but I do believe we're the same in the sense of our journey, our energy, and the more we link together and join on the journey, the more powerful we become. And I do have the cojones to post my mess. I'm a putz, like I said, that's part of who I am, right? I'm Putzy, and that's okay. I don't mind embarrassing myself that way, but I want to serve. But that's wrong too, because I need to be willing to do it for myself. So I want to serve through sharing my own personal journey with it, in the sense of it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not like we just turn a page and get happy. There's something here that's more complex. And I don't want to make it more complex than it needs to be, because you can't, by saying I want to get happy, I'm already putting it in the future that it's not here. So I am happy, let's say. But my full awareness of it, or ability to enjoy and expand it, is changing. And I'm here to share the journey in becoming real and asking for what is real from life and applying this vibrational game to my life so that I can generate things that really make me happy, where I'm willing to leave behind the fancy job that doesn't make me happy or the fancy relationship that doesn't make me happy, and follow the path that will lead me to the things that really do. And in so many ways, that is happening. Like I said, I have an incredible marriage. That's crazy. I didn't think it was possible to really be happy in a relationship and a marriage. And I have a wonderful home, and I have so many things. And the next phase for me is the job. I got out of the job I didn't like. I took this time to refocus because I think if I just jump into another job, it's going to end up being the same thing. I've learned enough to know that energy works that way. And we just kind of jump from one thing to the next, and it ends up being exactly the same. It looks different on the front end, always. I did that with relationships for a long time. This guy seems perfect. But after 6 months or a year, it turns out to be exactly the same as the previous relationship. So there's something on the front end, and we kind of end up, because we're only looking at the good things, we miss some of the other things, and we end up in the same situation. So I took this time to pause, really clear my energy, shift my energy, and moving on to that. But I also really want to share. I don't know why, but it just brings me great joy. And if I can uplift someone, or someone doesn't feel as alone, or someone feels more hope, that based on what I read and what I'm doing, like things are getting better, and give some explanation to what is going on here in this reality, and that we're not alone, we're doing this together, and we're going in a different direction. Like, join me, not because you need to watch or comment, although it really does encourage me, but because, and I want to hear from you too. I want to hear your journeys. I want to know how people are doing, and I want to uplift. And I want to know what uplifts, because I want to see boatloads of happy people walking around. And I want to see us really enjoying this goofy dream or whatever it is that we're in. And I don't think we're happy with the way things are going. I know I wasn't when I was fully invested in sort of the way we're told will make us happy. It just didn't feel good. So I want to do it different, and I want to show that it can be really meaningful. And applying what these masters have given us, these tools. I mean, even Alan Watts, I found out he wasn't happy when he died. Shit. Forgive my French, but that sucks. He knew so much. I love listening to his material, but he had a terminal illness, it looks like, when he died. He was struggling with alcoholism, but it probably got to him. I get that. It's not that I think his teachings are any less powerful, but he was speaking intellectually, and he wasn't speaking about his own experience a lot of the time, and how the material he was studying was changing how he was living. There's something in changing how we're living, where we're not expecting things from other people, but realizing that we're generating everything, even if it's the people that show up, the way they treat us. I lived so much of my life as a victim. I thought I was such a victim. I was so powerless in my life when I thought I was a victim. And now I'm beginning to realize I have control over everything. I am the most powerful person in my life, and based on what I think and how I live and what I believe, which are just thoughts I continue to think, how I vibrate, I'm creating my life. And I don't know about you, but when I realize this, I want to create good. If it's really up to me, I'm not a victim to anything. I'm the one doing it. So you know what? I got real depressed about that for a while, because I was like, if I'm in control of everything, why is it such crap? And how am I going to shift that? And that's a phase I think everyone goes through when they realize that they're creating their own reality with their thoughts. But it's in all the material, in different languages. And that's one reason I want to share from all these different masters. And I'm looking around because I have all these books laying around me. But I want to share from them because they each have their own language, but they're all saying the same thing. That's what I think. That's what I'm getting to. And working to find the link between them, because for me, I can apply it in a more pervasive way when I have a lot of different languages for it. And I feel like when we find things in a lot of different languages or said in different ways, it shows its truth, because I feel like the truth is always leaking through. This is a kind of dream that's happening that we're in. And whatever is out there, if you want to call it spirit or mind or God or soul or anything, is leaking the truth into us because there's an awakening process that's happening here. So with me, when I listen to Alan Watts, which I listen to him a lot, and I think maybe he's even more powerful post-death because he's probably out there in a more pure form than he was in life. But he didn't apply it in a way that really helped him. He probably got really frustrated. He probably felt like the world was going to hell in a handbasket. But he also probably knew that was his ego messing with him. It was probably a tangled web. And he probably, it looks like, killed himself or arranged to die at a certain time and have his body burned because he probably didn't want people to know he had a terminal illness or whatever was going on with him, which is his business. It doesn't need to be anybody else's business. Maybe he had a sense that would hurt his message, but it doesn't matter. None of that matters other than the reminder that just because you know doesn't mean you can apply. And I don't know about you, but I want to live the good life. That's why I'm on this journey, not so I can sound cool or write a cool book. Not saying that's what Alan was up to either, or any of the people I'm reading. But maybe that's what I was up to before, was sounding good. And I don't want to sound good. I want to live good, because I understand too that the better I live, the more it becomes possible for other people. It's who I'm really being day to day that is contagious everywhere I go. And I don't always have great positive thoughts. I don't know about you, but I can be critical, I can be judgmental, especially of myself. And I'm realizing that the more I'm doing it to myself, or other people, I'm always doing it to myself. It always has to do with me projecting out. Even if I think that person is crazy and they suck, it's really about my own shame and guilt. And so everything starts to come within. And so it has to do with changing me and changing my thoughts. And that's part of this process for me, is refocusing. When I talk for some reason into a camera, I've been talking for a while now, but I feel so much better. I don't know why, but I do. And it would be my heart's joy if it helped someone else too. I don't know why about that either, but I do know that I can share honestly. This is really who I am and where I'm at this morning. And I'm not putting on any airs, obviously. And now I'm gonna go poop and take my dog for a walk. And then we'll get into the reading. Thanks for being here. I really, really appreciate you more than I can say.